Okay, so last time we're looking at our good dead friend, Mary Wollstonecraft, looking at the notion of gender equality, and we looked at her views on wealth, etc. And now we turn to more stuff on Wollstonecraft. Now, one interesting point she makes is this. And I'll use since Thanksgiving is coming up, I'll use the example of Thanksgiving to kind of perhaps illustrate her point. Now, typically, how does Thanksgiving go? Well, in traditional Thanksgiving, who does all the cooking? The man or the woman?
The woman.
Yeah, the woman. Do the cooking, and then who does all the cleaning? Traditionally.
Woman.
The woman. Yeah, and I remember when I was a kid, yeah, we had the traditional Thanksgiving. You'd go, the guys would be watching, football or going out and shooting some animals, and the woman would be cooking all the stuff. They'd bring us the food, and we'd eat all the food, and we'd lay down like animals and watch more of the football. Also, to use another illustration, there's a classic movie that gets shown every Christmas, Christmas Story. Yeah, the classic one, with Ralphie, red rubber BB gun, put your eye out, that type of deal. And one of the points it makes in the movie is, talks about how the main character, the kid, talks about how his mother has never had a warm dinner because she's always serving everyone else, and her food's always cold. Now you may be wondering, so how does Thanksgiving and this tie into what Wollstonecraft said? Well, one interesting concern, question, issue is well, in terms of a woman's duty, who is her first duty to? Now, traditionally, using the example of Thanksgiving, Christmas story, the idea is that women put everyone else first, typically. You do all the cooking, take care of the kids, do all the work, etc. And this is also illustrated in the questions that women in business or politics get asked. When a woman runs for office who has a family, they'll often ask her, who's going to take care of the children, or how are you going to take care of the children? When Barack Obama was running for president, two young daughters, they didn't ask him who's going to take care of the children. And so a fair question is, who should be a woman's first responsibility to? Well, in the case of men, for men, in general, who are we first responsible to? Well, but in theory. But in practice, guys usually look out for who? Yeah, themselves. Now, Wollstonecraft takes the view that women their first duty is to themselves. Now, she's not presenting this like this selfish thing that women should just ignore everything else. And she says, next to the family, etc. Now, is she right about that? Should women have their first duty to themselves, not entirely at the expense of or rejecting duties to others, but is she right? Should women consider themselves?
Yes.
Why?
Because if men consider themselves, we should do the same.
Yeah, you could say, it's a fair thing. If someone wants a sandwich, make their own damn sandwich.
You mean a woman's a mother, or is it just a woman in general?
A good point. If someone's just, by themselves, that does, change things. If a person is all alone, then their primary responsibility is to themselves, because that's all there is. But if you got a family, then that would create other responsibilities. Yeah, so, it is, to use to kind of close this bit, but, the important thing is when we consider, women running for office or in business, our women, even now, sometimes look down upon for running for office or taking in a career if they have a family. Are they criticized for that?
Yes.
Yeah, and is that fair? No, when the woman is asked, who's going to be home taking care of the kids, they should probably say, yeah, make her a sandwich. Type of deal. Yeah, we could say that seems fair. Is there any arguments against that? That the woman should be, the man can look at himself first, but the woman should always be looking out for the man and the family first, and then put herself third.
So is there any arguments against that?
For that. The kind of the more traditional view that the woman should be making the sandwiches. it's totally sexist.
Oh, I'm not saying that woman has to make the sandwiches, but I feel like it's different roles for man and woman. I'm not saying a woman can't provide for herself, whatever, but I just feel like if you're a mom and you're the wife, I feel like you have like a specific obligation to your family, you know, to like, especially as a mother, because a mother's like I don't think like a mother's like being a father, like a mother is like that special, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like they have like a special duty.
I
That's
guess
just
it
my opinion.
depends, like, how you were raised, or like your religion maybe, or maybe your nationality. Because sometimes the man kind of takes on a different gender role in some different nationalities or something.
Yeah, I mean, they say a lot depends on how, a person's view of the roles that people should play. It does depend a lot on their religion, their cultural background, how they're raised. And so a person could argue, going back to our moral argumentation, a person could say there's a morally relevant difference between man and woman, and that the responsibilities of a mother include various things, the responsibilities of a father include other things, but the mother has like more responsibility to the children or different sorts of responsibility than the father. And people often make arguments from nature or from biology that kids, if they're hurt, they'll typically run to their mother. And of course, society, we generally put that burden on the mother. But there is a fair question of just because it's tradition or just because people think it's the case, there is a question whether that's right or not. Should the mother have more responsibilities than the father, or should they be more balanced? And potential paper topic there. I guess the title could be "Who should be making the sandwiches?"
Do you ever think that will change though, like for good?
Well, it has changed.
Yeah.
It used to be that I remember Thanksgiving when I was a kid. Good to be a man, or in that case, I was just a boy. That was pretty good too, because you just sit there and food would be like brought to you. Your only responsibility was don't choke to death on the turkey bones, and you didn't have to clean or anything. But then, as I got older, it was expected that you would, so now if I go to a family gathering, I know I'm going to be doing the dishes. That's just the way it's going to be. You can't say, "I'm a man, do the dishes," because then my sister would probably stab me a whole bunch. So. No, she's a very nice person, but she wouldn't do anything. She'd be very disappointed by my terrible behavior. Yeah, so it actually has changed. I mean, I'm pretty old, and it's changed a lot since I was a kid. Very, very different. And even in recent years, it's changed as well. It'll probably it may keep on changing to the point where people do argue that there should be no gender roles at all. And there are, for example. When I was called in for federal jury duty, there was a guy there, and they asked, "Do you have any, reason why you shouldn't serve on the jury?" And one of the women said, "Well, I'm a stay-at-home mother. I'm taking care of my kids." And a guy said, "I'm a stay-home dad. I'm taking care of the kids." And his wife, she's got a really good job making all the money. And people kind of laughed for a second because they thought he was just kidding. And they were like, "Oh, this guy's serious. He's really a stay-at-home dad." So probably the roles have definitely changed. And interestingly now, tying it into Wollstonecraft as well, some of our later points, is that now in some places, some cities, women make more than men. So maybe the case that the husband would be the one staying at home because he's not bringing the money, and the woman would be going off to work. And the guy, the woman will come home and say, "Honey, make me a sandwich." And we'll be the ones making the sandwiches. So practice those sandwich making skills because you want to get a good woman to take care of you. Now she thinks.
Is that like something that I always wonder, like, would women feel comfortable with that though? Their own dads?
I don't know, ask him. Do you feel comfortable having a man making you a sandwich?
You go out get the sandwich and then
Making a sandwich, yes. Staying at home while I'm at work, probably not.
You're worried they need adult supervision when they're at home. That's probably true. That is probably true. There's your answer, or at least one answer.
Yeah.
Now, what about, well, she considers next two important points. One is equal protection under the law. Now, in the past, in her time, back, going back a couple hundred years, women did not enjoy equal protection under the law. And of course, in some cultures, societies today, women don't have equal protection under the law. For example, places like Saudi Arabia, I think it's that women are not forbidden to drive, but I think that they're not allowed to get driver's licenses, which kind of makes it so that it's like you can drive, you need a license, but you can't get one because one is a woman. And of course, other countries have, if ISIS formed its own country, that's going to be totally horrible. Now, what about today? In the United States, do men and women have close to equal protection under the law? At least under, at least as the law is written down. Yeah. Is that good?
Yes.
Yeah. Why?
Because everyone has equal opportunities.
Yeah. Any reason to think that there should be like different types of laws? That, like, women should have less protection. In fact, you don't have to go that far back for women to have less protection than men. And is there a reason to think that it would be good to like kind of push back those equal protection of the law things?
Women, you're asking, or just in general between the two?
Yeah, I mean, would it be better to like roll back the laws?
No.
Why not?
Because
It wouldn't be fair, it would be sexist.
Yeah, I mean, it's a point of fairness. If we,
safety.
yeah, I mean, safety. It actually took quite a long time for the laws to kind of, there's probably still some, that are people that do have unequal treatment under the law. And interestingly now, one change that's occurring is that there are people that are arguing that men are being treated unfairly. For example, there's concerns that when it comes to the custody of children after a divorce, that men are treated unfairly by those laws. And so, interestingly or boringly enough, it's kind of switched around again. Another similar area was with education. Back when I was in school, centuries ago, it was predominantly male. But one thing, well, actually it's shown quite clearly here, that now it's majority female. That's like, I think at community colleges, it's, depends on the particular school, but I think the last time I looked, which was a while ago, it was about 53 or more %. And so now women are the majority in school, and men are a minority. Now back in the day, when men were the majority, there's a real push towards women's equality. So what about today? We have fewer men than women in school. Should something be done about that to bring that back in balance? Because when women were the minority, it was considered sexist. But now that women are the majority, is that sexist? Well, one thing to say is, well, no, because sexism is what hurts me. This is working out. Now, you might say that it would depend on the reasons, why there's fewer men. One argument people have given is that men have access to, reasonably well-paying jobs that don't require a college degree. I mean, there used to be good jobs in construction, manufacturing, etc. But of course, those jobs are going, or if not gone already.
It's like the army and stuff.
Yeah, there's a military, which is open to, actually open to everybody now. Yeah, and so there were, good-paying jobs that a man could, typically male-dominated fields, that didn't require the college degree. And some people have argued that women are more serious students than men. That men, just don't do as well.
Okay. What constitutes the word sexist? Yeah, I know people use that word loosely.
Yeah.
So
It's a good question. It's, we hear people being accused, people say like everyone's sexist or sexism. Excellent question. The stock definition is, it's, the thing you get like on Wikipedia or like a dictionary would be a bias or prejudice against someone on the basis of their, biological sex. And then of course you have varying degrees, like extreme sexism would be, heading towards misogyny would be actual hatred of, in the case of women, hatred of women, or misanthropy, hatred of men. But the general thing is basically a bias or prejudice against someone on the basis of their sex, is the strict definition. And of course there's varying degrees of that. But you do raise a good question. If someone, for example, tells, a joke with like a sexual element in the workplace, are they a sexist? If someone compliments, if a man compliments a woman on her dress or her shoes, is that sexist? And so one of the things we're working with, struggling with these days is what used to be like perfectly socially acceptable, jokes or comments, etc., now are classified as sexist. And so it's a very good question. What exactly is the definition of sexism, and what particular things would be sexist? Because it does change. I mean, like I said, I'm pretty old, and how people are supposed to interact has changed a lot in that time. Things that were totally acceptable when I was growing up now would get someone, fired, possibly arrested. Back then it was like just, normal. Yes, it does, the societal norms do change quite a bit.
So if you're in a country where they're, what's considered normal to them is different, for example, like Saudi Arabia, like you said, then the definition of sexist would be altogether just different depending on your location.
Yeah, in that culture, because there'd be the question of, is there like an going back to the stuff about objective morality, is there like an objective morality where there is things that would be sexist, objectively, wrong? And then as you raise a good point, there's a practical thing. When you're in Saudi Arabia, then what counts as acceptable behavior between the sexes is different. So, the way we accept interaction, in some countries, men and women couldn't be in the same classroom. Men couldn't be teaching women, women could not be in a classroom with men. When women are out in public, they have to have their faces covered, that sort of stuff. Yeah, so it's a good point. There is the question of, the culture just different, so when in Rome, you just kind of do as the Romans, or is it relative? When in Rome, the Romans are right. And people who do go, if you ever do visit a country like that, it's always good to know the laws and what's expected just to avoid trouble. Because in some places, if you break the rules, you get just in a little bit of trouble. Other places, you get taken out and, killed. So always good to check what the punishments are. It is crazy. That's why I like staying in the U.S., because the U.S. is crazy, but it's a crazy I grew up with. So I know I know how it works, I know things to do and things not to do. Now, the second thing she considers is, firstly, there's a matter of legal protection. Secondly, there's a matter of finances, financial dependence. Now, way back, even before my time, it was very rare for women to work, like pre-World War II. Women generally didn't work outside the home. A woman may have jobs like as a nurse, or a seamstress, prostitutes, etc. But in general, a respectable woman would stop working. She may have like a hobby or something, or may work as a young lady. But once she was married, typically she would not keep working. That was seen as often, not what a respectable lady would do. Now, Wollstonecraft raises the point that if a woman is dependent on a man financially, either, while the guy's still alive or after the guy's dead, that's a bad thing. Now, was she right about that? Should women be independent of men? I mean, but she doesn't mean like living apart, separate, continent or something. But the financial independence, is that something that women should have?
Yes.
Why?
Because you should want your own things.
One thing is, you want your own stuff. Natural thing. Now, what would be some practical reasons why a woman would want, or even a man too, these days, would want their own financial independence?
You should never be dependent on someone else. What if the husband or wife passed away and you have no other option?
Yeah, one thing is obviously death. A person dies, old age, accident, rabbit, squirrels, something. And then if the person doesn't have an income, they're out of luck. And of course, in addition to like the death thing, there's divorce. And what used to happen if the woman had no income, and people today say, oh, the divorce rate is so high. Back then, people really loved each other. It's like, you just couldn't get divorced then because you couldn't afford it or wasn't allowed. Yeah, so a practical standpoint, you don't want to be left to like starve. So very practical. Now, what about morally? Is there any sort of moral reason why a person would want to be independent financially.
You know, with like, I don't know if it's more without like, with, men, it's known like men supposed to be the providers.
Mhm.
So if a man is dependent on a woman, it's almost like he's using her for that, probably.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, there's a moral concern about, you know, being a man or a woman, that the person is not contributing. They're just kind of living off someone else. You know, we think it's okay with like kids, because, you know, well, actually kids used to work too, but we think it's okay because they're, you know, they're minors, but we think that adults should be able to contribute. You know, it's, in the same argument can be used in regards to, you know, doing the dishes, etc. You know, people shouldn't do all the work themselves. Someone shouldn't provide all the money themselves. People should contribute. Otherwise, they're just kind of sponging off or living off someone, which can be seen as bad. But then people do raise the point that everyone's probably seen the things that they post, like what would be the value of like all the stuff a woman does, like a mother, you know, like childcare, groceries, you know, except, you know, cooking, etc. And I guess you could argue that stuff, unless you might kind of balance out.
That's a lot of stuff, though.
It is a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff. Yeah, if you had to hire, you know, if you had to like hire someone to do all the stuff that like a wife and a mother does, probably couldn't afford it because it'd be like super expensive. Childcare is pretty pricey. I don't have kids, but I got a dog. And dog care is expensive. I think kids are probably more complicated than dogs, so it probably cost more. Yeah, so financial independence seems like a good thing. It's all, you know, both practically and morally. Now, one kind of interesting question here that comes up with the independence thing is, you know, again, tying into like the housework stuff and the income. I remember hearing an interview a while back from, they were interviewing a guy, and he said that his wife does all the housework, and his reasoning was, she had a decent job, but he had a better job, and his reasoning was that I think he was like a lawyer or something, but the amount of money he made per hour was so much more than hers that he said it made sense financially that she should do all the housework, because he had so many more billable hours. So let's say he could bill like $500 an hour, and she was only making, you know, $150 an hour. Then it'd make more sense for him to be working and her to be cleaning the toilets and, you know, making the food and taking care of the kids, because he was bringing in so much more money. And so one potential, I guess, if you're still looking for paper topic, might be, you know, how should the chores be divided up? Should the person who makes more income get a, you know, pass on doing all the unpleasant work because they're worth more? And should the person who makes less have to do all the crap work?
I have a question. This is just like an objective question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's kind of like a double standard though? Because like if a man works, and all right, let's say like, so you have two couples, one's the worker, the provider, and then one's like the stay-at-home person. If the man works and the woman is the stay-at-home, and you know, some people might say, oh, you know, that's like not right or whatever. But if it's flipped, then they'll be like, oh, that man's trying to use her, he's no good, he can't provide, this and that. So it's like society's like pushing at that on both sides. Like, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's still like what I said, when the guy said he's a stay-at-home dad, people laughed because they thought he was just joking.
Yeah.
You know, because the woman said she's a stay-at-home mom, they thought he was just gonna say, oh no, seriously, I'm like, you know, something else. Yeah, that's a fair point, because we still look at, you know, a stay-at-home dad, we think, oh, he must have lost his job, or he can't get his job. So stay-at-home dad is, to most people, is now shorthand for lost his job or can't get a job. But then some other people look at it, you know, look at it positively, like, oh, you know, he's, you know, progressive. I guess it depends whether the person's more traditional, man should be doing the work, or I guess more like progressive, oh, it's good that the man is doing that. And of course, there's also the practical thing that nowadays almost everyone has to work because it's just everything is so expensive. Everyone's got to be working to pay for all that stuff. But, you know, it's an interesting moral question about who should be doing the work. My own view is that even though, my own view is a person should clean their own toilet for moral reasons, because it keeps you like connected. It's hard to be like a total, you know, because really if you're cleaning your own, it's hard to like get up and, you know, build up airs and arrogance if you're scrubbing your own toilet bowl. It keeps you connected to cooking your own food, etc. So my own view is that even if someone makes a lot of money, they should, do some of their own work, just as a matter of moral responsibility. But then people do argue, well, because I was complaining about having to, because I do all my cleaning, cooking, and lawn, yard work and stuff, and I'm like, it sucks doing all this stuff. And so I was like, why don't you hire someone? Like, I can't do that, because it'd be, I'll hire people to do stuff I can't do, but I can clean my own toilet. So, but I could be wrong. Maybe if I made enough money that I can afford to do so, I should do that. But it's a good question. If you have a relationship, how should you divvy up all? Because there's always crap work you got to do: laundry, cooking, cleaning up, dog vomit, child vomit, whatever kind of vomit you get going on. No one wants to do that. But there's a question: how do you divide that up? Is it a good moral, excuse to say, well, I make more, so my time is more valuable, so you have to do all the crappy stuff? Would that be morally okay? And it's based on if you have a relationship with someone else, you're wondering that question, because no one wants to clean the vomit up, and you got to decide who's going to be handling the messes. Now, turning now to politics. Now, in her time, women, of course, could not vote. A lot of men couldn't vote, and they couldn't serve an elected office. Although, of course, they could be, because of the nation of royalty, everyone knows about Queen Elizabeth, Queen Victoria, etc. So interestingly, there could be like a queen, but they couldn't be like women serving in other areas. Just the way the royalty stuff worked. Now, what about today? Can women vote?
Yes.
Should they be allowed to vote?
Yes.
Why?
They live in the country, so they should have an opinion, some type of action towards what's gonna happen.
I mean, if they pay taxes,
Yeah.
anybody pays taxes, they need to give.
Yeah, you can use the argument from the American Revolution. No taxation or representation, women pay taxes, therefore they deserve representation. And if you're a citizen and following the laws, then you should have a say in the laws. Democracy 101. Now, what about being in office? Should women be allowed to hold office?
Yes.
Yeah, probably the same argument. Now, how does the U.S. do? I mean, we're like, considered leader of the free world, but compared to other countries, how do we do in terms of women in office? We do horrible. Yeah, we do really bad.
I have a question.
Yeah.
They were doing like this survey, I believe it was, with the Marine Corps.
Mhm.
They were trying to like integrate.
Oh yeah, the combat.
Yeah, but they were saying that like the women's squads
Mhm.
would like, they just wouldn't perform as well as the male squads. So like one of the questions that was coming up is, should that be allowed? An all-women squad?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I'm familiar with the study because they were trying to figure out performance, and they looked at the armor, artillery, and infantry, and they put them through like standard tests like carrying a machine gun, setting it up, shooting the target, carrying artillery shells, dragging it's an exercise, so dragging a wounded comrade off the field of battle. And they did find that the mixed gender units perform significantly worse than all male units. Yeah, and so one argument that can be made is that if women objectively do worse than men, and you're looking at something where performance really matters, like battle, that in that case, having like a balance would be a mistake. Yeah, I mean, that's an argument that can be made, that although we would want gender equality, if it's going to get people killed, that's not a price we want to pay for that equality. Now, it could be one counter against that is one fair point is looking at those particular tasks, the units with women may have done worse, but it's worth considering, did they do better in other areas? And there's also one thing you could look at is maybe technology can handle that problem. I mean, because one thing is that everyone's seen like the Avengers, you get Iron Man. They really have they don't have like Iron Man armor yet, but they do have like exoskeletons. If you ever saw the Tom Cruise movie Edge of Tomorrow, they had the exosuits. And if you make exosuits standard, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, they're equally strong. So just technology maybe could.
The exosuit like makes you like stronger.
Yeah, because it's just like they're not as cool as in the movies. You can't like run around, but they do. It's basically like you have like a, like a forklift type of setup, except that you wear it, and so it has hydraulics, and so you use that instead of your muscles. And so someday we'll probably, I mean, it's been science fiction for a long time, but we may find like infantry and stuff, you'd wear, like Iron Man, you'd wear powered armor. So it wouldn't matter how strong you were, you know, as a person, until your batteries ran out, I guess it mattered a lot. Yeah, we could argue that technology could make a difference there. But it's a fair point, because we do want to consider in jobs where performance does matter, we want to have fair standards, like how strong do you have to be like a fire person? Or how strong do you have to be a machine gunner? Or how strong do you have to be to work in artillery? And if someone can't do that, we don't want to say, well, we'll just do it for the sake of equality, because then we're getting people killed. But if we set fair standards, you could say anybody who can meet those should be able to have that job, but if they can't meet them and they're fair, then they shouldn't have them. Now, in terms of politics, is there a similar problem? Are women just worse at politics than men? Are they as bad at politicking? I mean, I guess the question would be, if we had more women in office, would things all go to hell? No, because they're already there. So. Mostly. Yeah, I mean, in fact, people have argued that it would be better. And this could also be seen as a sexist argument. They'd be better if there were more women, because they'd be less likely to have wars, so they claim. They'd be more responsible, more concerned with social goods, which could ironically be a sexist argument as well. Now, in the United States, of course, how many women presidents have we had? Yeah, no. Hillary and Fiona are trying to be the first. And also, like in the Senate, you know, state legislatures, maybe look at mayors, people in Congress, local governments, administration in universities, CEOs of businesses. There's not even close to, you know, it's not like, you know, 46, you know, 54. It's in many cases like 13, you know, like 87. So it's pretty low. Now, of course, we have to consider whether this is actually, because when we're considering whether something's sexist or not, we have to consider why the numbers have a disparity. For example, take like really nerdy pastimes, like playing Dungeons and Dragons. Pretty much entirely, mostly men. But is that because of sexism? Or like video games, you know, like video games like Halo and stuff. Are those mostly played by guys? Yeah. I mean, true. I mean, if you look at gaming, there's sexism, etc. But anybody can go and buy a game, or just you don't have to tell people. You just buy the console, you know, on Amazon, and you just load it in. No one knows online who you are. You just, unless you tell people, which you should never do, because people are horrible. But one of the reasons people say the reason why there are more men than women doing like Dungeons and Dragons or video gaming is women just don't want to do that. They're just not interested. Better things to do than pretend to be, you know, aliens and cyborgs and stuff. And so maybe in the case of, you know, business or politics, that is a disparity, but it's not sexism. It's that women just don't want to do that. Now, is that true? Is the disparity in politics and in business that women don't want to do it, or is there an unfairness there?
Probably was an unfairness before, but probably not this year, or like more recently.
Yeah, we could say now, legally. Can someone say, nope, can't be a CEO because you're a woman? It says right in our laws, no lady CEOs.
Maybe like 30 years ago.
Yeah, long ago. But are there obstacles now? Yeah, I mean, one thing is, we just looked at earlier, the woman is seen as the one having to be responsible for the kids. And so, having a family, you know, with a guy, you know, guys generally don't say, well, my career was set back a lot by having a family. Typically not. I mean, it could happen, but typically not. But with a woman, it usually kind of takes her out of the business, you know, field. And so everyone's probably heard of the glass ceiling. There's also what they call the mummy track. Because if someone's going to have kids, usually the time people have kids is usually that prime maneuvering, you know, in academics and business and politics to start getting into office. And if someone gets out of business or politics or academics for that time period while they're raising the kids, they fall way, way, way behind.
This is an objective question. Just want to hear how people think. do you think that for an office like president, where you have to be really the commander in chief for like the army and stuff, do you think that there's a difference in the way men and women think as far as how they would react to certain situations, like just based off of gender, or is it just everybody would react the same?
Excellent question. I mean, that is an objective question. Do men and women have, factoring all the individual differences between us, because everybody thinks differently, is there, say, a woman way of thinking that women would be more inclined to, and a man way of thinking? And there have been, I think the book is called The Female Brain, but there have been some studies that suggest there are differences. I mean, there clearly are chemical differences, different biochemical differences, different structural differences, but it is an excellent question. Is there a difference that is actually relevant? And the answer is I don't know. I mean, the politically correct thing to say is, oh, there's no difference whatsoever. But of course, what science has to inquire, is there actually a difference that makes a difference? And if there is a difference that makes a difference, that would be something worth considering. If men think differently than women, well, to use a clear example, I've heard people say that women should be in office because they're less inclined to go to war, they're more caring. When a woman gets money, they spend it first on the family and not wasting it on stuff that men do. When men get money, we waste it on stuff. And the claim is that women are better in terms of, if you look at it in terms of social good, women are supposed to be better than that. And so you could say, well, women do think differently, and some people say women think better than we do, because we always want to have wars and, blow our money on, shiny stuff and things that go boom. Now, there are also people who make the argument the opposite, that men are more decisive, stronger, less prone to emotions, and so they make better leaders. And there are arguments on both sides. As far as the correct answer, I'd say scientifically, we don't have a definite answer for sure. Differences, yeah, but not for sure. And I would never say anything definite on camera. No, my honest opinion is that I don't. I mean, I've seen arguments on either way, and there's a question like Wollstonecraft raises, women do behave differently than men, but how much is built in and how much is social conditioning? I mean, kind of like with clothing. Some women wear pants, some women don't. Women can clearly wear pants, but some women don't, but that's more of social conditioning than, obviously than nature. Similarly, in terms of being, say, like aggressive, women are socialized to be less aggressive, but I know plenty of women who are very aggressive, way more violent than I am. Yeah, so excellent question. Very good question. Now, continuing along with business, should women have the opportunity to pursue any career they wish, assuming they're, able to do it? I don't mean in terms of being like a woman, but having the capability as a person of doing so. I mean, because everyone can't. I mean, they do say everyone can be a brain surgeon, but that's not true. I couldn't be a brain surgeon. I admit that. I mean, I can cut stuff, but I guess I could probably learn if I spent a really long time. But probably not, because now. So, should a person, regardless of their sex, have the freedom to pursue whatever career they are capable of doing, or should there be gender restrictions? Yeah. Why not? Why should people be free to pursue whatever career they can do?
Because we can all do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the reason someone should be able to do something is they can do it. And so if someone can do it, there would be really no compelling reason why. Now, of course, we could look at traditional, people often look at traditional roles that will disrupt society, upset gender orders, etc. And that would be essentially an appeal to consequences. We have to show that there'd be more harm. Going back to your example, if it be shown that, say, a person, suppose you had a legitimate, job requirement, and one sex couldn't meet that. So, for example, could a man ever be a surrogate mother? No, because you don't have biology. And that wouldn't be sexist. Yeah, so I go with the technology. If you ever saw the movie, what was it with Arnold Schwarzenegger? We had the, I think it's like called, no, it wasn't called Twins. Maybe it was one of those movies, but he had like the baby implanted. I don't know. I kind of blank it out because it's not a great movie. But yeah, I mean, or if there's a job that required, physical strength, and most men and no woman could have that level of strength that was, that was actually required, then you'd say, well, that's not a sexist thing. That's, you've got to be, legitimately, you've got to be like this strong, legitimately. But women don't hit that level of strength. And so you'd say, as long as that's a legitimate qualification. If somebody says, well, let's see, women are this strong, so we'll set it here, so no ladies. But if it was actually legitimate, you really do have to be that strong, then we could say that would be fair.
No question.
Yeah.
For when you said like if technology can supply for that, would that be, for example, like a police officer? Like, let's say police didn't have guns and it was just like physical.
Yeah, it's physical. Yeah, you said to punch people.
Yeah. So would that be like an example where it would be, best to go with like the stronger person? But since there's guns, then it's like whoever.
Yeah, I mean, like back in the like now. I mean, if you go, using the example of weapon technology, if you go back to, when people fought with swords and so forth, you had to be in pretty good shape. Because, even though the swords, they're not like they are in the games were like giant blades. They typically weighed about 2 pounds. But you had to be in pretty good shape to get out there and, be hacking away at someone. And if you weren't in good shape, you generally would be pretty dead pretty quick. Yeah, so back then it made sense that armies were predominantly male and predominantly stronger people because you just had to be. But once you bring guns in, all you have to be is strong enough to lift the gun, which isn't terribly strong, and pull the trigger. That's all it takes. Yeah, so war has changed quite a bit in terms of the qualifications. Yeah, and so technology could keep advancing to that point. And you raise a good point. If police had to go in and like punch out the bad guys, then you'd have to, the cops would be pretty big, well-trained people. But when you get a gun, that, as they said, God made men equal, but no, see, how'd it go? Yeah, no, it wasn't. Damn it, it's such a good quote, and I blew it.
It's crazy.
But it's one about Sam Colt, his Equalizer, something like that. Blew my quote. Oh well, it's on the Google, you can look it up. But yeah, the idea is the gun is a great equalizer. I think it's something like God made men unequal, but Samuel Colt made them all equal again, something like that. Anyway, it's a good quote, but I can't remember it. Because memory. It's the, what was I saying? Whatever. Now, another thing she turns to, kind of may seem somewhat ironic, is this. She claims that the most respectable women are the most oppressed. Now, in her time, the most respectable women were those that were most beautiful, that were, sort of the belles of society, who did not toil, who did not work, etc. Now, how could they be the most oppressed? The people who were seen as the most respectable, the ladies of society who did nothing but looked pretty. Yeah, it's a pretty boring, unsatisfying, empty.
They're probably people probably saw them as like objects, not people.
Yeah, so they were, oppressed. Now, what about today? Are the most respectable women today oppressed?
Yes.
Who are the most respectful women?
Good question, because that asking who the most respectful women are ties in the question of are they oppressed or not. And you say they're oppressed, and
yeah, because me, I don't go to the club, I don't party and stuff, but I be bored. I be like, man, I need to read a book or something. I don't be bored. So I agree. I think so.
yeah, I mean, we can use the examples today. We don't have some places still have princesses, but we have supermodels, or people who are just very fancy, the idle, empty, rich, and we can see them as being sort of oddly, even though they're models are well compensated, we could say, well, they can make all that money, but are like models, etc., are they oppressed? Well, what happens if a model puts on a little weight? What happens?
They fired.
Yeah, they get fired, and the internet goes insane. And just rips them apart. They have to, stand up for their right to consume food. Yeah, and so we could say that there still is. We may differ about what is. You raise a good point. What is respectable? But we'd say some people are very famous and sort of, I guess, admired by some. Often are the most oppressed. They don't have that.
With someone like Oprah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point, because we could say, if we look at women who are respected, Oprah, Hillary Clinton, is Oprah oppressed? Or Oprah-pressed?
If I was Oprah, I would be, because if I was famous, I feel like I would have to watch my back. Like, if I was the richest person in the world, so I'd be scared to go out, you know.
Yeah,
Have,
true.
what they call it, the,
Oh, the paparazzi?
yeah,
Yeah.
paparazzi. You know.
Yeah, true.
Does paparazzi bother Oprah though? Is it
They,
like-
no one bothers, no one crosses Oprah, that's just the way it goes. They did once, they did one time. Yeah, I mean, Oprah did, she's the Oprah, no one messes with her. But yeah, I mean, there is a price with being famous. I mean, you get all that good stuff, but as you said, the paparazzi harass you, people are always trying to get your money, you may get crazy stalkers who try to kill you, that type of stuff. But in general, you know,
It's crazy.
our idea of what counts as a respected woman has changed. We look at people like Hillary Clinton, Carly Fiorina, Oprah, etc., famous, you know, actors, scientists, etc. And we could say that, well, one important thing is what we respect is change. We don't just respect empty beauty anymore, we respect accomplishments with empty beauty. So what does she think we should do? Well, one of our concerns is that, well, she's kind of addressing the problem for, one of the problems for the time. If a woman just uses her charm and beauty to get a man, what happens to beauty? What does time and gravity do to beauty?
The old, get gray hair.
Yeah, time and gravity,
No more.
yeah, they're mean. Time and gravity are mean, they're super mean. You get slower, gravity, everything pulls, gravity all pulls it all down, yeah. And so there's always someone younger, hotter, prettier, and in the case of if a woman, if all she has is her appearance and that goes, then what is, you know, the husband gonna do? What, yeah, you know, trophy, you know, wife number one, aside, wife number younger, hotter model, you know, moves in. Now in her time, of course, that was, the woman really had, you know, nothing to fall back on, no career, etc. Now today, are there still what we call trophy wives?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people who are rich and powerful, they often try to, you know, get, you know, somebody beautiful. And presumably women are starting to do this now, getting their trophy, their trophy husbands. And of course now one advantage is, from a practical standpoint, is, you know, the no-fault divorce. So people can't be cast aside quite as easily. But she thinks that it is a mistake to rely just on beauty, because beauty fades, and when a person loses that, they'll be abandoned. And she's right. And this kind of ties back to her thing about not being dependent. And she's right about that. Did you have a backup for the good looks? Yeah, probably a good idea.
That's the top of the use.
Yeah, sure. Yep. What do you do when, what to do when one's not pretty anymore, where the pretty goes? So to close, what does she say we should do? Well, she thinks that, and this is a good question, if there's like oppression, mistreatment, should the people who are doing the oppression, in this case men, do they have a reason to bring about an end to the oppression? On the one hand, of course, if it's a system of oppression, the people who are doing the oppression get something out of it. You know, for men, you get sandwiches brought to us. So the good question to be is, what is in it for men? Why should they have a reason to cooperate to bring about equality? You know, for example, so why should men be concerned that women make equal pay? Why should men be concerned that women have equal chance in politics, equal chance in business, that women are equally protected under the law? Because it would seem, some people argue, that every gain women make is a loss for men, that we lose something.
Because those women are their family members and their mothers.
Yeah.
That's good enough, right?
Should be. Yeah, it's your family, you know. You don't want, I mean, these are people you care about and you love. You should want them to be treated well. But what if someone says, I don't care about that, what's in it for me? Well, yeah, there's the political avoiding being taken out, you know, and dragged through the brambles on, you know, Twitter and the Facebook. What if someone says, I don't care about that Facebook and Twitter stuff. I don't go on that interweb thing. True, it can be heartless, but someone says, I haven't got one of those hearts. I don't feel stuff. Well, I mean, there are, I mean, people could appeal if the moral concern, like it's the right thing to do, concern for others goes. Is there any practical reason?
That's a question.
Yeah.
Is society right now catering to women equally as men, or is it still? I can't really see it because I'm a guy. And,
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, people often think if things start to swing not totally in their favor, they think, oh, things are bad for guys because women are getting some stuff. It's like, you know, white people, you know, when things get better for minorities, like white people are like, well, you know, being a white person myself, they're like, we're like losing all this stuff, you know, our world's being destroyed. It's like, no, your world's not being destroyed. It's just, you can't treat people horribly anymore, you know, get over it, move on. Type of deal. For real, I mean, people get really upset. I'm like, you're not losing anything. You're just losing, you know, unfair privilege. You know, so same thing can happen in the case of men. We think, you know, as men, we're thinking, oh, we're losing all this stuff, but are we losing, or is it just we're not losing? Things are just being more equal. Things are being more fair. Yeah, it's a good, excellent question. Now, in terms of the practical stuff, I mean, one thing is financial. The way the economy works, can people get by on one income? Have a family. Well, I guess if the income's really, really good, but for most people, no. It's, yeah, groceries are, everything's more, you know, food, all that, education, really expensive. Now, Wollstonecraft says that it's better for men. Just, you know, laying aside the moral concern, etc. It's just better. You know, better companionship, the financial concerns, and so she makes a pretty good moral argument for why, even though we do lose, you know, as a guy, you lose some stuff. You're going to make your own sandwich sometimes. It's a terrible thing to give up. But you get so much more in return. And it's a fair, if people don't fall for the moral appeal or that they should care about other people, let's say they're heartless, then you could appeal to the practical thing, that it's a better world for them. And this, I mean, the US, we're moving that way. A more, you know, very serious challenge is other parts of the world, like, you know, for example, like Afghanistan or Saudi Arabia. How do we convince people that, you know, that this move towards equality is better? Because people feel their traditional privileges, men, feel their privileges and advantages threatened. And they've got to be convinced that, you know, they may do so out of love or goodness, but they really got to be sold on it, you know, in terms of what are they going to get, what's in it for them. Okay, so it ran a little long, but we'll move on to some other stuff next time, looking at moving away from gender to ethnicity. So have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you Wednesday.